Basic knife skills, whether you're using a butter knife or you're using a rotating razor blade, the knife skills are the same. It's wonderful to practice with something that's a little less intimidating. So today we've got some Play-Doh and we have a butter knife to practice some of the different pieces. As you're going through this, these same rules apply when you're cutting with something razor sharp, something dull. It's better and it's more safe actually to cut with something more sharp. And the reason for that is you're less likely to drag and have that blade skip. You're having to use less force. When you apply less force, or if I rephrase that, if you use more force, as you're cutting through a surface, you're more likely to cut through something, and then that extra force is going to drive it into a piece of flesh of some kind. So, some of the basics for knife safety. One, we never want to be cutting towards our grip hand. So say we're cutting a circle and we're going to cut through this. You start away, you're doing a great job cutting away from your hand here, but then as you circle, you're prone to just be lazy and you're prone to just keep cutting towards, and as you rotate that blade, start cutting back towards your hand. And that's where, like, if you have a dull knife, or let's say that something skips off, that's an easy piece that right into your finger, right into your hand, and you have a really nice cut, especially if you're using a razor blade. So the better technique is when you're cutting a circle or you're cutting any of these really sharp angles, rather than rotating the blade, you're going to kind of rotate in tandem. You're going to rotate that knife, and then when you get to a certain part, you're going to actually start rotating the mat that it's on, or the piece of paper that you're cutting, or the piece of cardboard, what have you. And as you're cutting that, now you can see you're continuing to rotate. You're always cutting away from your hand. At this point, I probably can just finish the cut here, but oh, wait, no, I'm coming back. So I'm gonna rotate again. I wanna finish this into a nice circle. So it's better to rotate the material and not cut towards your hand or your placement hand. If you're using a butter knife, this is something that definitely you're not going to be able to sheath or anything like that. But if you're stepping away from the project, you're not carrying this knife with you. You're going to set that knife down, keep it in a safe location, then you can step away and do something else. If you're using something sharp, say a razor blade, a pocket knife, something like that, once you're done, you always want to cap the blade. You do not want to be walking with this blade. You always want to have that cap securely in place so that no harm is going to be able to be done. You'll set that down, you'll walk away from your piece and do what you need to. No matter what you do in class, whether that be with a butter knife or a razor blade or anything else that we use in the classroom or outside, you never point a knife at somebody or make any threatening gestures. That's an immediate threat. That's an immediate problem. This is not something to be joking around with or goofing with. So even if it's a butter knife and you're just pretending, that's never okay. That's not appropriate. That's something that's going to be stopped right from the get-go. When using any type of knife, you should be using your dominant hand, either right or left-handed. If your right or left hand gets tired, your dominant hand gets tired because of whatever piece you're cutting, it is not safe to rotate hands to your non-dominant hand. That's a really great choice to make mistakes and make slips. When using any type of knife, you need to be giving it your full attention. So when you're making cuts, if you're using a razor blade, if you're using a butter knife, you should be, or a chef's knife in the kitchen, you should be putting your full attention into what you're doing and what's going on so that you remain safe and the people around you remain safe. Speaking of the people around you, you want to make sure that when you're in this space and you're working with something sharp, you need to make sure everybody around you is clear of that area. And then as you're going, even if you get frustrated, say you're making a really hard cut and you make a mistake and you're like, oh no, that's not the time to just start hacking away and just start slabbing and cutting. That's not how we behave with a knife for a couple different reasons. One, this is a really great way of turning a blade. And when you turn a blade, that means you're losing control of the knife blade, and that knife blade can be redirected into some type of harmful location. The other piece is when you're using a thin blade like this razor blade. This thin blade, if you go ham on this sucker and you just start slapping away at it, this blade easily could break, shatter, and fly off in different directions, causing harm to other people around you or to yourself. So if you make a mistake, back off, take a second, calm down, take a couple of breaths, and then reapply the knife and try to finish the cut the best you can. It's always okay. We can always get you new material to work with. It's not okay. I can't always get you a new thumb or a new appendage. If you do end up cutting yourself, whether with a butter knife or with the razor blade X-Acto knife, don't hide it. Let's own up to our mistake, and we can get you bandaged up and get you back to work. Knife blades do cause injury, and so what we're trying to do is make sure that we're always focused on being safe and secure. When you are making a cut, you should never be cutting towards the triangle of death, so to speak. And what that's referring to, that seems pretty dramatic, but what that's referring to is cutting inside your thighs. You have veins and arteries that run down to supply blood to your system, and that can cause pretty quick death if we cause injury there. So for us, we will always have a cutting board underneath our table or underneath our object, whether that be cardboard or paper or Play-Doh in this respect. And then when you're cutting, it shouldn't be a gentle slice. It should be going pretty much straight down into the cutting board and then moving the cutting board and the object. So most of the pressure is actually in the cutting board rather than the material itself. By thinking of cutting through the material to the cutting board, that allows you to always have a downward pressure of that blade rather than a side pressure that might skip off and cause harm. So we want to be cutting through the material into the cutting blade, and that is the practice that we're going to be trying to pursue throughout. It's much better to move the object through the blade, and if you notice, the blade's not really moving all that much, rather than taking the blade and running it through the object itself. That gives you some basics of knife safety to pursue in our endeavors.